Chapter 1. The Stranger's Warning. The coffee in my hand had gone cold 3 times that morning. Each time, I dumped it and started over, standing in line at Morrison's cafe like a ghost haunting his own life. 5 days since we buried Ethan. 5 days since the world stopped making sense. My name is Jasper Oliver, and I used to be someone who controlled situations. 15 years in military intelligence, then another 8 running my own security consulting firm. I'd tracked terrorists across 3 continents, built digital fortresses for Fortune 500 companies, and trained soldiers to think 10 steps ahead of their enemies. But none of that prepared me for watching my 5-year-old son's casket lowered into the ground. The police called it an accidental drowning. Ethan had gone out to the pool while Cynthia was in the shower. By the time she found him, it was too late. The investigation lasted 48 hours. Case closed. My wife played the grieving mother perfectly. Tears at all the right moments, trembling hands, that hollow look in her eyes. I believed her. God help me, I believed her. Large black coffee. I told the barista, my voice sounding like gravel. The kid behind the counter, couldn't have been more than 19, looked at me with that particular brand of pity reserved for the freshly bereaved. Small town. Everyone knew. On me. A voice said behind me. I turned to see a man in his late 50s, salt and pepper hair, wearing a rumpled jacket that had seen better days. His eyes were different from everyone else's, sharp, assessing. Not pitiful. Calculating. That's not necessary, I said. Yeah, it is. He handed the barista a 20. Keep the change, kid. Then he turned to me, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Days after your son's death, I bought you coffee, Jasper. Now I'm handing you something more important. He pressed a business card into my palm. Your wife killed him. I saw it with my damn eyes. Call me tonight. The card read, Vernon Anderson, Private Investigations. He walked out before I could process his words, leaving me standing there with a cooling cup of coffee and a grenade disguised as cardboard. I should have dismissed it. Grief attracts vultures, conspiracy theorists, fortune tellers, people trying to sell you closure in neat packages. But I'd spent too long reading people to ignore what I'd seen in Vernon Anderson's eyes. He wasn't lying. He believed what he'd said. More than that, he'd been waiting for the right moment to tell me. I went home to our colonial in the suburbs, the kind of house that screamed successful American family. Cynthia was in the living room, dressed in black, accepting a casserole from a neighbor. She'd been beautiful once, still was, technically. Auburn hair, green eyes, the kind of smile that could sell anything. She'd sold me on forever 8 years ago. Who was that? She asked after the neighbor left, gesturing to the card I'd forgotten I was still holding. Nobody, I said, slipping it into my pocket. Just someone offering condolences. Her eyes lingered on me a beat too long, and for the first time since Ethan died, I saw something behind them that made my blood run cold. Not grief, not shock, calculation. I'm going to lie down, she said, kissing my cheek. Her lips felt like ice. Chapter 2. The Truth Beneath. I waited until midnight to call. Cynthia had taken an Ambien. She'd been taking them religiously since Ethan died and was dead to the world. I went out to my workshop, a converted garage where I kept my security equipment, and dialed Vernon's number. Jasper, he answered on the first ring. You ready to hear this? I'm ready to hear why you think you saw something nobody else did. Because I was paid to watch your house, Vernon said bluntly. Your mother hired me 6 months before she died. Cancer makes people see clearly. She knew something was wrong with Cynthia. My mother. She'd passed away 2 years ago, fought pancreatic cancer for 8 months. Toward the end, she'd been adamant about updating her will, making sure Ethan was taken care of. She'd also pulled me aside once and asked if everything was okay at home. I'd brushed it off as chemo brain. My mother hired you to spy on my wife. To protect you. Eleanor Oliver was a sharp woman, Jasper. She saw things in Cynthia's behavior, inconsistencies, manipulations. She wanted proof before she said anything, didn't want to destroy your marriage over suspicions. She paid me for a year of surveillance up front. Then she died. I kept watching because, hell, your mother reminded me of my own. I owed her that much. I gripped the phone tighter. What did you see? 3 weeks ago, I watched Cynthia meet a man at the Riverside Hotel. Same man I'd seen her with a dozen times over the past 18 months. They weren't having coffee. He paused. His name is Grant Kaufman, my business partner. The man I'd trusted with half my company. The guy who'd been at Ethan's funeral, shaking my hand with tears in his eyes. That doesn't mean. June 15th, Vernon cut me off. 2:15 p.m. I was parked across from your house like I had been every Tuesday and Thursday for months. I saw Ethan go out to the pool. He was wearing those shark swim trunks, carrying that inflatable dinosaur. You were at the office. Your wife wasn't in the shower, Jasper. She was standing at the kitchen window, watching him. The world tilted. Watching him. For 5 minutes, she just watched. Then she walked out to the pool. Ethan was in the water, playing. She got in. He swam over to her, smiling. I could see his face. She held him. And then, Vernon's voice cracked. Then she pushed his head under. Held him there. He struggled for maybe 45 seconds. She held him until he stopped. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. You saw this and didn't. By the time I got to your gate, she was screaming for help, calling 911. I couldn't get through the lock. Your security system is too good. I sat in my car and watched the ambulance take your son away, and I knew I had footage of a murder. But I also knew what it would do to you if I came forward right then. So I waited. 5 days. Long enough for you to start asking questions yourself. The footage, I managed. You still have it. HD video, time-stamped, from 3 different angles. My van has a camera array that would make the FBI jealous. Your mother paid good money for quality surveillance. I thought about my background, the years of tactical operations, asset recruitment, information warfare. I'd run missions in places where the wrong move meant death. I kept my head while men around me lost theirs. But this? My wife murdering our son while I sat in an office reviewing security protocols for a tech startup? Why? The word came out broken. Why would she do this? That's what we need to figure out, Vernon said. But Jasper, whatever you're thinking of doing, think it through. She's dangerous. She killed your son in broad daylight knowing cameras might see her. That takes a special kind of cold. I ended the call and sat in my workshop surrounded by monitors and servers, tools of my trade. I'd built a career on staying 3 moves ahead, on turning enemies' strengths into weaknesses. I'd trained military assets to infiltrate terrorist cells, to become the mask they wore until the moment they struck. Cynthia had no idea who she'd just made an enemy of. Chapter 3. Digging Up Devils. The next morning, I played the grieving husband perfectly. Made breakfast neither of us would eat. Held Cynthia while she cried. Talked about funeral thank you notes and when we should go through Ethan's room. All the while, I was cataloging everything. The way she checked her phone constantly. How she tensed when I mentioned going back to work. The fact that she'd already taken down most of Ethan's photos from the mantle, claiming they were too painful to look at. A mother who couldn't bear to see her son's face, or a woman eager to erase evidence of what she'd done. I'm heading to the office for a few hours, I told her around 10. Just need to check on a few things. Relief flashed across her face, quickly masked by concern. Are you sure you're ready? Work helps, I said, kissing her forehead. Her perfume smelled like lies. I didn't go to the office. I went to Vernon's, a small apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant in the old part of town. The place was exactly what I'd expected. Walls covered in case files, computers running surveillance software, the organized chaos of a man who lived for investigation. Show me, I said when he opened the door. Vernon didn't waste time. He pulled up the footage on his main monitor, and I watched my son die. Ethan had been so happy that day. I could see it in his face when he jumped into the pool, the way he'd laughed and splashed. Then Cynthia walked out in her white cover-up. She got in the water. Ethan swam to her, trusting, loving, and she killed him. I watched it twice. Not because I didn't believe it the first time, but because I needed to burn it into my memory. Every second, every angle. This was the fuel that would drive everything that came next. There's more, Vernon said quietly. I kept digging after your mother died. Your wife's maiden name was Cynthia Thomas. But before that, she was Cynthia Brennan. He pulled up a police report from 10 years ago. Lexington, Kentucky. A man named Derek Brennan, Cynthia's first husband, had died in a house fire. Accidental, according to investigators. Faulty wiring. The insurance payout had been substantial. She married you 2 years after Derek died, Vernon said. New name, new life, new target. Target. The word tasted bitter. Jasper, your security firm is worth $12 million. You have a $5 million life insurance policy. You updated your will last year to make sure everything goes to Cynthia if something happens to you and Ethan. I'm guessing that was her idea. It had been. presented as protecting our family, making sure we were all taken care of. I'd signed the papers without a second thought. She killed Ethan to destroy me, I said slowly, pieces clicking together. A grieving man makes mistakes, becomes careless, maybe starts drinking, maybe has an accident, or maybe becomes so depressed he takes his own life, Vernon added. Either way, she walks away with everything. And my guess? Grant Kaufman is her partner in this. He gets half the company when you die, the clause you both put in when you started the firm. Partners take care of each other's families if something happens. I thought about Grant. 6 years as my business partner, friend, trusted confidant. We'd built Oliver and Kaufman Security Solutions from nothing, growing it into one of the top consultation firms in the region. I'd stood up at his wedding 3 years ago. He'd been Ethan's godfather. I need to know everything, I said. Her schedule, her communications with Grant, their plans. I need to know what they're going to do before they do it. Vernon smiled grimly. Now you're thinking like the intelligence officer you used to be. I've been monitoring her phone since last week. She's using encrypted messaging apps, but nothing I can't crack. She and Grant are planning something. They're being careful, but they're also getting cocky. They think they got away with murder. They did, I said. For now. I spent the next 2 hours going through Vernon's files. Cynthia and Grant's affair had started 2 years ago at a company retreat. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, a burner phone that Cynthia thought was secret. Vernon had documented everything with the thoroughness of a man who'd spent a lifetime in investigation. But it was the recent messages that turned my blood to ice. He's falling apart. Give it another week. Cynthia, 3 days ago. Are you sure about the timing? We don't want to rush this. Grant's response. Trust me. I've done this before. Derek Brennan's face stared at me from a driver's license photo in Vernon's file. Young, trusting, probably in love with a woman who was already planning his murder. What are you going to do? Vernon asked. I looked at my reflection in his darkened computer monitor. I'd spent 15 years learning how to neutralize threats, how to dismantle organizations from the inside, how to turn predators into prey. I'd retired from that life because Cynthia had convinced me I could be something else. Something softer. She'd made a mistake. She'd shown me what she really was. And she'd forgotten what I used to be. I'm going to make them destroy each other, I said. And then I'm going to destroy what's left. Chapter 4. Setting the board. I returned home that afternoon with a plan crystallizing in my mind. Revenge wasn't about anger. It was about precision. In military intelligence, we had a saying, the best operations are the ones where your enemy never sees your hand until it's already around their throat. Cynthia was in the kitchen when I walked in, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw her clearly. Not as my wife, not as Ethan's mother, but as an operator. A hunter who'd identified a target and executed her mission with cold efficiency. How was the office? She asked, her voice pitched perfectly to suggest concern without demanding details. Rough. Grant asked about coming back full-time. I watched her reaction carefully. A micro-expression of pleasure, quickly suppressed. I told him I needed more time. That's good, she said, reaching for my hand. You shouldn't rush yourself. Her touch used to comfort me. Now it felt like a snake coiling around my wrist. That night, I began my own operation. First, I needed assets, people I could trust. My years in intelligence had taught me the value of building a network. I'd kept mine quiet after leaving the service, but it was time to reactivate it. I made 3 calls from my secure line in the workshop. First, Trent Dixon, former NSA cryptographer who now ran a boutique cybersecurity firm. We'd worked together on a joint task force in Afghanistan. If Trent couldn't break encryption, it couldn't be broken. Jasper Oliver, he answered, surprise in his voice. Been a long time. I heard about your son, man. I'm sorry. Thank you. I need your help, Trent. Off the books. Personal matter. A pause. How personal? Life and death. I'm listening. Second, Margarito Bruce, a former military police investigator who transitioned into private security. Intimidating as hell, built like a tank, and absolutely loyal once you earned his trust. I'd saved his life in Kandahar. He'd told me once that made us brothers. Jasper, he answered. Name it. I need surveillance on my business partner. Physical and digital. Can you start tomorrow? Consider it done. Third, Ashley Nicholson, a former military attorney now in private practice. Brilliant, ruthless in court, and someone who understood the gray areas of the law better than anyone I'd ever met. Jasper, I was going to call you, she said. I wanted to pay my respects. I need you to review my will and my business partnership agreement. Quietly, I think someone's planning to cash them in early. Her voice shifted from sympathetic to professional in a heartbeat. Come to my office tomorrow. Bring everything. With my team assembling, I turned to the second phase, information gathering. I needed to know exactly what Cynthia and Grant were planning. When? How? Every detail. Vernon had already planted malware on Cynthia's laptop, military-grade spyware that recorded every keystroke, every email, every message. But I needed more. I needed Grant's communications too. That meant getting into my own office systems, which Grant had helped design. Ironic, really. We'd built one of the most secure consultation firms in the region, and now I needed to hack our own network to catch my partner plotting murder. I spent that night in my workshop building a custom exploit that would bypass our security. It was delicate work. If Grant noticed any anomalies, he'd know someone was watching. But this was what I'd done for years in the military. Goes through systems, extract intel, leave no trace. By dawn, I was in. Grant's emails, his calendar, his phone records, all of it flowing through encrypted channels to Vernon's servers. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Grant had taken out a $3 million loan against his half of the company 6 months ago. He was drowning in debt, gambling, from the looks of his credit card records. Casino charges, offshore betting sites, cash advances that suggested desperation. Cynthia had found herself a mark who needed money as badly as she needed a new life. They'd probably promised each other everything: love, freedom, wealth. All they had to do was remove one obstacle. Me. Chapter 5. The Trap Titans. 3 days after Ethan's funeral, Grant called asking to meet for lunch. His timing wasn't subtle. According to the messages Vernon had intercepted, Cynthia had instructed him to check Jasper's mental state and keep him isolated. They were preparing for the next phase of their plan. I met Grant at Delancey's, a steakhouse we'd celebrated our first major client at 6 years ago. He looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes, tie loosened, the kind of wear that came from stress, not grief. "How are you holding up?" he asked, signaling the waiter for whiskey before I'd even sat down. "Day by day," I said. The lie came easily now. I'd spent years playing roles in hostile territory. This was just another mission. Some days I can barely get out of bed. I can't imagine. He drank deeply. "Listen, I hate bringing up business, but we've got the Meridian contract renewal coming up. They're asking questions about our stability. I might need to handle it solo if you're not up for it." Meridian Technologies, our biggest client, a $2 million annual contract. If Grant handled it alone and I wasn't around, the relationship would naturally transfer to him. One more piece of my empire shifting into his control. "You think I'm not stable?" I asked, letting an edge creep into my voice. No, Jesus, Jasper, I just meant." "I know what you meant." I leaned back, studying him. In interrogation, we called this the pause, letting silence do the work. Grant squirmed. "Guilty people always did." "I want you to take it," I said finally. "You're right. I'm not in the headspace for pitching right now." Relief washed over his face. "Are you sure?" "Yeah. You've always been better at client relations anyway." The compliment was calculated. Predators got sloppy when they thought they were winning. "I trust you, Grant. You're the only person I can trust right now." The words tasted like poison, but they had the desired effect. Grant's shoulders relaxed. He smiled, actually smiled, like he was doing me a favor by stealing my company. "We're brothers, Jasper. Whatever you need." I wanted to reach across the table and break his jaw. Instead, I raised my glass. To brotherhood. We drank. He had no idea he'd just walked deeper into the trap. That evening, Cynthia was on her phone when I got home. She quickly locked the screen when I entered, but not before I'd seen Grant's name. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just checking in with a friend," she said smoothly. "How was lunch with Grant?" Interesting. They'd coordinated this. She was supposed to know I'd been with him. They were working together, touching base, making sure their story aligned. Classic conspiracy behavior. "Good. He's taking over the Meridian account." Her eyes lit up. "That's great. It'll take pressure off you." "Yeah." I moved closer, watching her micro-expressions. "He's been a good friend through all this. Almost like family." A flicker of something, guilt, triumph, crossed her face. "He cares about you." "I know." I kissed her forehead. I'm lucky to have people I can trust. She leaned into me, playing the devoted wife. I could feel her phone vibrating in her pocket, probably Grant, confirming the conversation had gone as planned. My own phone was recording everything. Audio, video, building a case piece by piece. Later that night, while Cynthia slept, I met with Ashley at her downtown office. She'd spent the past 2 days reviewing my documents, and her expression was grim. Your partnership agreement is a time bomb, she said, spreading papers across her desk. If something happens to you, Grant gets control of the company. He can buy out your shares at book value, which is significantly less than market value. Essentially, he'd own Oliver and Kaufman for a fraction of what it's worth. And my will. Everything goes to Cynthia, including your stake in the company. But here's the interesting part. There's a clause that says if she wants to liquidate her inherited shares, Grant gets first right of refusal at the same book value. Between the insurance payout and selling the company, your wife could walk away with about $8 million. Grant would get a $12 million company for less than $3 million. That's the deal, I said. They split my life between them. There's more. Ashley pulled up a file on her computer. I did some digging into Cynthia's background. The Derek Brennan fire? The investigation was closed, but the detective noted inconsistencies in her statement. She claimed to be visiting her mother the night of the fire, but there's no record of that visit. The detective suspected arson but couldn't prove it. Can we reopen the case? Not without new evidence. But Jasper, if she did this before. Ashley trailed off, the implication clear. She'll do it again, I finished. Which means I need to move first. What are you planning? I stood, looking out over the city lights. I'm planning to be dead. Ashley's eyes widened. Excuse me. Not actually dead. But they need to think I am. Or at least that I'm on the verge of it. Cynthia's patient. She waited 2 years to kill Ethan. She'll wait for the right opportunity with me. I need to give her that opportunity, control it, and use it to expose everything. That's insane. And dangerous. Welcome to my world. I turned back to her. I need you to draft a new will without anyone knowing. Leave everything to a trust. Make it ironclad. If I die under suspicious circumstances, it all goes to investigation of my death and criminal prosecution. Nothing to Cynthia, nothing to Grant until they're cleared. That'll take time to hold up in court. It doesn't have to hold up. It just has to scare them. Make them desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Ashley studied me for a long moment. You've thought this through. I've thought about nothing else. Chapter 6. The Perfect Storm. The plan took shape over the next week. Every piece had to be perfect. One wrong move and Cynthia or Grant would bolt, and I'd lose my chance for justice. Phase 1 was already in motion. Trent had cracked both Cynthia's and Grant's encrypted messaging. Their communications were damning, not explicit enough to convict in court yet, but clear enough to understand their intent. They were planning an accident for me. Soon. The latest message from Grant. Meridian meeting is Friday. He's trusting me with everything now. Maybe this weekend. Cynthia's response. Too soon. He needs to be more depressed. Isolated. Another 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's how long I had to engineer their downfall. Phase 2 involved Margarito's surveillance. He'd been tailing Grant, documenting his casino trips, his meetings with loan sharks, his growing desperation. The man was hemorrhaging money, taking riskier bets, trying to dig himself out of a hole that only got deeper. He met with someone yesterday, Margarito told me during one of our check-ins. Guy named Asa Burnett, local enforcer for underground betting operations. Grant owes him $100,000. Burnett made it clear, Grant's got until the end of the month or things get painful. Good, I said. Let me know if Burnett makes contact again. The debt was leverage. Grant wasn't just greedy. He was cornered. Cornered animals were unpredictable, which meant I needed to control his options carefully. Phase 3 was the most delicate, making myself vulnerable while staying in control. I needed Cynthia and Grant to believe I was falling apart, that the perfect moment for their accident was approaching. So I started drinking. Not really. The bottles I carried around were mostly water tinted with food coloring, but visibly. I stumbled occasionally. Let emails go unanswered. Missed meetings. Had Trent send Grant messages suggesting I was becoming unreliable. At home, I played the broken man. Stared at walls. Went through Ethan's room and cried. Asked Cynthia about getting sleeping pills because I couldn't rest. She ate it up. Maybe you should see a therapist, she suggested one night, her voice dripping with false concern. I don't want to talk about it with strangers, I said, making my voice hollow. I keep seeing him. In the pool. I dream about it every night. Oh, honey. She held me, and I felt her satisfaction. This was going exactly as she'd planned. The grief was supposed to break me, make me careless, lead me toward the cliff edge. She just didn't realize I was building that cliff myself, and she was the one who'd fall off it. Friday came. The Meridian meeting. I'd told Grant to handle it, had even coached him on the pitch. He was nervous. This was the biggest contract he'd managed solo. But it was also the perfect opportunity. While Grant was in downtown at Meridian's offices, I was breaking into his house. Vernon had provided me with bypass keys and security codes. I moved through Grant's bachelor pad quickly, planting devices, microphones, cameras, keyloggers on his home computer. Then I went through his files. What I found was more damning than I'd hoped. A handwritten note, tucked in a drawer. Insurance policy, $5 million. Will, everything to C. Company, majority to me. Timeline, 4 to 6 weeks after E. E for Ethan. Grant had been planning this for months, mapping out exactly how they'd divide my life after murdering my son. The handwriting analysis alone would be devastating in court. I photographed everything, sent it to Vernon's secure server, and left the house exactly as I'd found it. Grant would never know I'd been there. The meeting with Meridian went well, according to Grant's excited call afterward. He'd closed the deal, secured the renewal. He was riding high, feeling confident. Perfect. Confident criminals made fatal errors. That night, I initiated Phase 4. I called Grant and asked him to meet me at our office Saturday afternoon. There's something I need to discuss, I told him. About the future of the company. The bait was set. In the encrypted messages that followed, Grant told Cynthia, he wants to talk about the company. This might be it. Cynthia's response, be ready. If he's giving up control, we move this weekend. No more waiting. Saturday. They were going to try to kill me Saturday. I had 48 hours to turn predators into prey. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. Saturday dawned gray and cold, the kind of day that matched my supposed mood perfectly. I went through my morning routine like a man sleepwalking through life. Coffee untouched, staring at nothing, the performance of grief I'd been perfecting. Cynthia watched me with barely concealed anticipation. She knew today was significant, though I'd been careful not to tell her about the meeting with Grant. Let her wonder. Let her and Grant communicate, coordinate, make their plans. Every message they sent was another link in the chain I was building. I need to go to the office for a few hours, I told her around noon. Grant wants to discuss some things. Do you want me to come with you? The offer was calculated. Stay close, see what I was planning. No, I said firmly. I need to do this alone. Make some decisions about the future. She hugged me, and I felt her relief. The broken man going to make decisions. Probably signing over power of attorney. Making it easier for his tragic accident to transition everything smoothly to his beloved wife. I drove to the office in my personal car, not the company sedan. Made sure I was visible, trackable. Grant needed to know I was coming, and I needed him to think I was predictable. The office was empty on Saturday, just us and the weekend security guard, Stan Pratt, a retired cop I'd hired specifically because he was honest and observant. I'd briefed him earlier in the week about a security test we'd be running. He knew to monitor everything and intervene only if I gave a specific signal. Grant was already there when I arrived, sitting in the conference room with paperwork spread out in front of him. He'd dressed casually, jeans, a sweater, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Thanks for meeting me, I said, sitting across from him. Of course. You sounded serious on the phone. He pushed the papers toward me. I took the liberty of drafting some restructuring proposals. Given everything you're dealing with, I thought it might help to have options. I scanned the documents. They were beautifully crafted lies, proposals that would effectively transfer control of the company to Grant while making it look like I was stepping back voluntarily for mental health reasons. Ashley had been right about the partnership agreement being a time bomb. Grant had just handed me the detonator. This is a lot, I said slowly. You've really thought it through. I'm trying to help, Jasper. You're my best friend. If you need time away, I'll take care of everything. Like you've been taking care of my wife. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Grant's face went white, then red. What? How long? I asked calmly. How long have you been sleeping with Cynthia? I don't know what you're. 2 years, I said, answering my own question. Since the company retreat in Asheville, you stayed an extra night. So did she. Room 412 at the Grove Park Inn. You weren't subtle, Grant. He stood up, panic replacing calculation. Jasper, listen. Sit down. My voice carried command weight, the tone I'd used with soldiers under my command. Grant sat. I want you to understand something. I know about the affair. I know about your gambling debts. I know about Asa Burnett and the 100,000 you owe him. And most importantly, I know what you and Cynthia did to my son. What? No. Jasper, I swear, I had nothing to do with. You had everything to do with it. I slammed my hand on the table. You needed money. She wanted a fresh start. You both wanted me out of the picture. So you killed my son to break me, planning to finish me off when I was vulnerable enough. Wasn't that the plan? Grant was shaking now, genuine fear in his eyes. I didn't kill Ethan. I swear to God. Jasper, I didn't touch your son. But you knew Cynthia did. Silence. Damning, absolute silence. She told you afterward, didn't she? I pressed. Called you. Excited, said phase 1 was complete. The son was gone. Just had to wait for the husband to crumble. It wasn't, Grant's voice cracked. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. She said she'd find another way. I never wanted. You never wanted a child to die, but you were fine profiting from his murder. I leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything. Every detail of your plan with Cynthia. Every conversation, every arrangement. And then you're going to help me destroy her. Why would I do that? I pulled out my phone and played him a message. Vernon had isolated Grant's voice from one of his calls with Cynthia. Once Jasper's gone, we split everything. You get your fresh start, I get out from under my debts. It's perfect. That recording is going to the police, I said, along with evidence of your conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and about a dozen other charges. You're looking at life in prison, Grant. Unless you cooperate. You're wired, he said suddenly. This is a setup. Smart. I opened my jacket, showing him the recording device. Everything you've said is documented. The security cameras in this room are active. Stand downstairs as a witness. You're already caught, Grant. The only question is whether you go down alone or take Cynthia with you. His face crumbled. The confident predator vanished, leaving behind a desperate, weak man. What do you want? The truth. All of it. And then you're going to help me get her confession. Chapter 8. The final play. Grant talked for 2 hours. Every detail. Every conversation. Every moment of the conspiracy. The affair had started as he'd said. Asheville, 2 years ago. Cynthia had seduced him deliberately, chosen him because she saw his weaknesses. The gambling addiction. The debt. The resentment he secretly harbored about being the junior partner despite doing equal work. She'd shaped him like clay, making promises of wealth and freedom, painting pictures of life without the burden of the company, without me. She'd been patient, laying groundwork, building trust. The plan to kill Ethan had been hers. Grant claimed he'd argued against it, said there had to be another way. But Cynthia had convinced him it was necessary. A tragic accident that would shatter me, make me vulnerable, prepare the ground for the final phase. She told me it would look like drowning, Grant said, his voice hollow. That it would be quick. I didn't think she'd actually go through with it. And then she did, and I was already in too deep. If I backed out, she'd tell you about the affair. If I went to the police, I'd be admitting conspiracy. I was trapped. You were a coward, I corrected. There's a difference. He didn't argue. The plan for my death was supposed to happen within the next month. Cynthia had been researching accidental carbon monoxide poisoning, something that would look like a tragic home accident. Faulty heater, grieving man taking sleeping pills, never waking up. Clean. Explicable. She has the equipment already, Grant said. Got it last week. She's just waiting for the right moment. Perfect. That meant she'd incriminate herself buying the materials. Trent would have found the transactions in her browsing history and credit card statements. Here's what you're going to do, I told Grant. You're going to call Cynthia. Tell her I signed the papers, that I'm transferring control of the company. Tell her I seem worse than ever, drinking, depressed, talking about joining Ethan. Tell her tonight's the night. She'll kill you, Grant said flatly. She'll try. I smiled coldly. That's the point. We choreographed it carefully. Grant made the call from his cell phone, which I was recording. His performance was adequate. Fear made him convincing. He signed everything, Grant told Cynthia. He's barely coherent. Kept talking about how he can't go on without Ethan. He even asked about the sleeping pills you've been giving him, Said he might take extra tonight. I could hear Cynthia's excitement even through the phone. Is he still at the office? Heading home soon. He's drinking. Jasper, tonight might be the time. A pause. Then, I'll be ready. Make sure he doesn't talk to anyone else. I'll handle everything. Handle everything. Code for murder. After Grant hung up, I looked at him with contempt. You're going to stay here. Vernon Anderson, the private investigator who's been documenting your crimes, is on his way to babysit you. If you try to warn Cynthia, if you try to run, if you do anything but sit here and contemplate your life choices, I will make sure you face every possible charge. What are you going to do? Grant asked. I'm going to give her the opportunity she's been waiting for, I said. And I'm going to watch her take it. I went home just after sunset. Played my part perfectly, stumbling slightly, bringing in an empty bottle from the car, looking like a man at the end of his rope. Cynthia met me at the door, all concern and sympathy. Honey, Grant called. He said you signed some papers? Doesn't matter anymore, I mumbled. Nothing matters. Don't say that. She guided me to the couch. Why don't you lie down? I'll make you some tea. Tea. That would be where she'd put whatever drug she planned to use. Probably the sleeping pills combined with something stronger. I let her settle me on the couch, watched her disappear into the kitchen. My phone was in my pocket, live streaming everything to Vernon's secure server and to Margarito, who was parked outside. Ashley was on standby with the police, ready to make the call at my signal. Cynthia returned with tea and a gentle smile. Drink this. It'll help you rest. I took the cup, pretended to sip while palming the liquid away. I keep thinking about Ethan, I said. About that day? You were in the shower, right? Something flickered behind her eyes. Yes. Do you think about it? About finding him. Every day. Her voice was soft, practiced. I talked to someone who said they saw something. I continued, watching her carefully. A private investigator. Said he was watching our house that day. Her smile froze. What? Vernon Anderson. He said he saw you at the pool. With Ethan. I set down the tea. He said you weren't in the shower at all, Cynthia. He said you were in the water. With our son. She stood up, her mask cracking. That's insane. Why would a private investigator be watching our house? My mother hired him. Before she died. She knew something was wrong with you. I stood too, steady now, the performance over. She was right. You're drunk, Cynthia said, backing toward the kitchen. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. You killed Ethan. You've been planning to kill me. You and Grant were going to split everything after I was gone. I pulled out my phone, showing her the recording app. It's over, Cynthia. I have footage of you drowning our son. I have recordings of your conspiracy with Grant. I have evidence of your first husband's murder. It's all over. Her face transformed. The loving wife vanished, replaced by something cold and reptilian. You have nothing that will hold up in court. Video can be faked. So can recordings. Maybe. But I don't need a court. I gestured to the windows. I have something better. Margarito crashed through the front door, followed by 2 police officers. Ashley appeared in the kitchen doorway. She'd been there the whole time, witnessing everything. Cynthia spun, looking for an escape route, but there was none. She was surrounded. Cynthia Oliver, one of the officers said, "You're under arrest for the murder of Ethan Oliver and conspiracy to commit murder." She laughed. Actually laughed. You think this will work? I'm the grieving mother. The devoted wife. Who's going to believe? Everyone, I interrupted. Because I'm going to make sure they see exactly what you are. Chapter 9, Justice. The trial lasted 3 weeks. It would have been faster, but Cynthia's attorney tried every trick to suppress the evidence. The video footage. The recordings. Grant's testimony. It didn't matter. The jury saw through her act in the first 2 days. Vernon Anderson testified about what he'd witnessed. His HD footage played on screens throughout the courtroom. You could hear people gasping when Cynthia pushed Ethan's head underwater. Several jurors cried. Grant testified as part of his plea deal. He'd pled guilty to conspiracy and fraud, accepting a 15-year sentence in exchange for his cooperation. His testimony was damning. Every conversation, every plan, every moment of the conspiracy laid bare. Ashley had found the carbon monoxide equipment in Cynthia's car, exactly where Grant said it would be. Receipts, browsing history, even a handwritten timeline of how she planned to stage my death. The prosecution also brought in Detective Preston Chung from Kentucky, who'd investigated Derek Brennan's death. With new evidence from Cynthia's computer, searches for arson techniques, insurance policy information. He reopened the case. Kentucky was waiting to try her after she was convicted here. Cynthia took the stand in her own defense, a calculated risk that backfired spectacularly. Under cross-examination, she maintained her innocence, claimed Vernon's footage was doctored, that Grant was lying to save himself. But she couldn't explain the messages on her phone, the equipment in her car, the searches on her computer for undetectable poisons, and staging accidental death. The prosecution's closing argument was simple. Cynthia Oliver is a hunter who targets vulnerable men, marries them, and kills them for their money. She did it to Derek Brennan. She did it to Ethan Oliver to break his father. And she would have done it to Jasper Oliver if he hadn't been smart enough to catch her first. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found her guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and attempted murder. The judge sentenced her to life without the possibility of parole. 3 months later, I sat in the same coffee shop where Vernon had first approached me. Morrison's Cafe, where this had all begun. Vernon joined me, sliding into the booth across from me. "How are you holding up?" "Better," I said honestly. "Some days are harder than others. But knowing she can't hurt anyone else helps." "Grant's sentencing is next week," Vernon said. 15 years, but the DA thinks he'll serve 20 with good behavior. Good. I felt no sympathy for him. He'd had a choice at every turn and had chosen money over decency. "What about the company?" Vernon asked. "Selling it," I said. Ashley found a buyer, a security firm out of Boston. They're keeping the name, keeping the staff, but I'm done. I can't walk into that office knowing what was planned there. "What will you do?" I looked out the window at people passing by, living their ordinary lives. "I'm starting a foundation in Ethan's name. For children's safety, drowning prevention, that kind of thing. And I'm going to work with victims of domestic crimes. People who need someone who understands that monsters don't always look like monsters." Vernon nodded approvingly. "Your mother would be proud. She knew something was wrong, even from a hospital bed. She protected you, even after she was gone." "I think about that a lot," I said. "How she saw through Cynthia when I was blind to it. How she hired you to watch over me." "Eleanor Oliver was a hell of a woman," Vernon agreed. "She saved your life." We sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching the world move on. My phone buzzed, a message from Ashley. The sale of the company was final. The money would go into trusts and investments, securing my future and funding the foundation. I'd turned pain into purpose, turned loss into action. It wouldn't bring Ethan back. Nothing would. But it meant his death wouldn't be meaningless. "Vernon," I said, "thank you. For watching our house. For waiting for the right moment to tell me. For everything." "I didn't do it for thanks," he said gruffly. "I did it because it was right. Still, thank you." He stood, preparing to leave. "What you did, catching her, building that case, making her face justice, that took courage. And skill. Your intelligence training served you well." "It did," I agreed. "But I hope I never have to use it like that again." After Vernon left, I stayed in the booth, finishing my coffee. The stranger in line behind me 6 months ago had changed everything. One conversation, one business card, one moment of truth that shattered my world and rebuilt it. Cynthia had tried to destroy me. She'd killed my son, planned my death, thought she'd won. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated who I was beneath the husband and father exterior. She'd seen a soft target, not realizing the intelligence officer was still there, dormant, but never gone. I'd won. Not because I was stronger or smarter, but because I'd been willing to do what was necessary to play the long game, to turn her own trap against her. Justice had been served. Ethan had been avenged. And I was still standing. I left Morrison's Cafe with the morning sun warming my face, and for the first time since Ethan's death, I felt something close to peace. The road ahead was long, but I'd walk it, one day at a time, one step toward healing. The stranger's warning had saved my life. Now I'd spend that life making sure other people saw the truth before it destroyed them. That was my promise to Ethan, to my mother, to myself, and I always kept my promises. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.